Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another
Oladipo!
one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Works down by Burke, bounces into Cody, puts it up, score!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome in. Happy Tuesday. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers with me as always. How are you, Kevin?
Good morning. Another pleasant Tuesday as Indiana's got finals this week. So got to wait till Saturday for the next basketball game. But got Notre Dame at the Crossroads Classic, and that should be interesting based on watch the end of that game. Notre Dame's upset of Kentucky. Blake Wesley, big shot.
Blake Wesley, a guy that Indiana fans should be familiar with, a name that was on the recruiting trail a couple of years ago and hit the big shot to give Notre Dame the win over Kentucky.
Yeah, and I talked to him during the Indiana All-Stars in Southport over the summer. Really nice kid. Very few sources in my career have thanked me for interviewing him, and he was one of those kids that thanked me for interviewing him, which was really nice. I thought it was kind of a nice gesture by him, and so it's good to see him have success. Obviously, Indiana fans are not going to want to see him have success on Saturday, though.
Yep, the last installment of the Crossroads Classic. And not only that, Indiana has played Notre Dame. They've been playing each other for a long time. I mean, you go back to the Bob Knight era. I think that's one of the games that maybe he set up if it wasn't already taking place, but they played each other every year going back to then. So I don't know if that series will continue in some form or fashion or not. We'll see. But one of the reasons getting out of that is to play in other higher profile events.
It would be cool to see like an Indiana Butler game in Hinkle. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? That would be.
It would for Butler.
That would be pretty neat, or to set up a home and home, or have Butler come to assembly, or do something of that nature. Set up a home and home series with Butler. Set up a home and home series with Notre Dame. Maybe go up to the Joyce Center.
Well, that's then. What's the reason of getting out of the Crossroads Classic then?
Well, I'm just saying, you don't have to do it every year, but just do like a 2-year series for, to sign a contract for once within the next 10 years. You don't have to do it every year, but just play on campus sites. I think that would be kind of neat rather than, just doing it in neutral court sites. The Crossroads Classic has probably run its course, and I think Indiana's going to want to, get into the possibility to open the door to maybe some bigger events, in the coming years. And it will be interesting to see. I think the Indiana brand is still powerful enough where maybe you could get into some of these classic tournaments that you see Ohio State and Kentucky are going to be playing in Las Vegas. Imagine an Indiana basketball game in Las Vegas. That'd be pretty cool, right?
Well, that's the thing. They have not been able to do that in the last couple of years because they've been tied into other stuff. So having the freedom to do that, that would be a little more fun.
They did the Maui,
freedom
right?
to go up to Madison Square Garden. Well, they were supposed to go to Maui 2 years ago, and that got canceled, or last year, whenever it was, and that was canceled. Mike Woodson is already talking about trying to get some games in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that would be good. Go back to New York, and they were in New York a couple of years ago, right? For
the Big Ten tournament was in New York.
Yeah. But didn't they play? Who did they play? And they played UConn, remember? And they beat them at the buzzer. Joey Brunk had a good game. Yeah, that was 2 years ago. They were in the Jimmy V, I believe. So I think there's some opportunities there. Yeah, you go to New York, you go to, and that helps with the recruiting footprint too. Yeah, why not play a tournament down in Florida? They got these things in like Fort Myers and Niceville. Why not go to the Virgin Islands? The Indiana women have gone to the Virgin Islands and the Bahamas the last few years and so forth. And, that would be pretty cool.
A stat keeping error in the Illinois State Chicago State game led to a sportsbook refund. A point spread, let's see, was like 9.5, and mistake occurred in late in the second half of the Illinois Chicago State game. A made free throw by Illinois State with 49 seconds to play was erroneously recorded as a miss. Illinois State, a 9.5 or 10-point favorite at most sports books, went on to win 80-71 without the made free throw counting.
How about that?
Most sports books paid out both sides, or some did.
That was
They were the one, and they're the ones that spotted the mistake.
I know. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good for all that are involved. But yeah, you got to be careful nowadays with those points. You never know when it's gonna. The stat keepers have to be on top of it, because you never know when it's gonna come back to bite you there. And it did certainly for those in the wagering world.
Wagering world. That's right. Those in the wagering world. The Big 12 SEC Challenge is upon us.
They're doing it this week.
Does anyone care?
Yeah, they bounced that event around. They tried to do that event in January, I thought. They were usually doing it during that bye week, and now they moved it back to December. That's kind of weird, but
no, maybe it's not. Maybe they're just using that picture because they
usually do that. They usually do that the last weekend in January. I know, because I've been to some of their games.
Well, their picture is under Real Basketball Realignment Tracker.
Yeah.
Why they put that picture up, I have no idea. But another wave of NCAA conference realignment is upon us as college sports fans have begun readying themselves for major changes across the Division I college basketball conference landscape as they know it. Well, this is from ESPN reports. While realignment in college sports has largely been centered around the earth-shaking moves in college football, men's and women's college basketball are hardly immune to this. College basketball's 32 Division I conferences, 15 have pending membership changes on the horizon.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that will be interesting to see how that shakes out and how that affects the competitive balance of college basketball. You have Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. I think that will be that should be a decent boon. I mean, Porter Moser, Oklahoma has already posted some significant wins this year. They just beat Arkansas. They beat Florida earlier, so they've already knocked off a couple of SEC teams.
Yep, lots of movement. Just never stays the same. It's not going to stay the same, I guess, until it finally finds water always finds its level spot, usually. Yeah,
no question. But I think, Jim, the interesting thing is how it's going to affect, the overall college basketball landscape, how it'll affect seeding, and the competitiveness of the games. And does a league like the SEC go to 20 games now, the way the Big Ten did?
How do they not? How can they not? What are they going to have? 18 teams in that league?
Yeah, they'll have 16 teams in that league. So you would think that they would go to 20 games. But it'll be, and that's good. I think that's good for television too, for their networks too, to give them a little more programming, particularly during the winter months.
How do they not go to 9 games in football like the Big Ten did a few years ago? They're still playing 8 games in that conference.
I mean, that could be on the horizon, but I think that it's worked well for them. I mean, if you take a look at the number of SEC national champions the last few years, it's worked very well.
Yeah, it works well for them. Of course it does, because they're playing 4 cream puffs.
I mean, they're not always playing cream puffs. I mean, some of them have, games that are built into their, rivalry games that are built into their schedule from other conferenes. But
who does Alabama play? Who does Alabama play?
No, I mean, Alabama doesn't. But Alabama usually in the beginning of the year, they play in that classic game at Atlanta where they're playing, a Power 5 team. This year they wiped the floor of Miami, and they played West Virginia in the past. They've played teams in the past of that. But I do think that, the wear and tear of that league, just like the wear and tear of the Big Ten, it affects you. And I think with the Big Ten, it's interesting because it probably has worked to their disadvantage a number of years. And James Franklin's been very vocal about that, about, whether they should be playing 9 games. But, the plus side is the revenue.
Well, his biggest deal is he doesn't care if it's 8 or 9, but it needs to be the same for everybody.
Yeah. Here's the thing that's been interesting, though. The last 5 or 6 years, the Big Ten has been the richest conference. Like the SEC has been the dominant conference, but the Big Ten has been the richest conference. And one of the reasons why the Big Ten Network. Because of the Big Ten Network. And why does the Big Ten Network flourish? Because they have more inventory. They play more games on TV. They play more competitive games, and that helps. So, and the Big Ten has taken that tact, and the institutions have, certainly, been helped by that in terms of the revenue. But it hasn't shown up on the national championship ledger the way you'd want in terms of, last football national championship being in 2014, last basketball national championship being in 2000, which is amazing to me, even though it seems like the Big Ten has teams in the Final Four almost every year. They can't quite get over that hump.
Yeah. Louisville, I miss this. They were going back and forth with the president left for Penn State, and the AD was flirting with Florida State. I think it got into a deal with his contract. He has to give 30 days notice, can't go to a school within the conference. And so he ends up quitting. I didn't see that he quit, but he ends up quitting without another job to go to. And Louisville named Deputy Athletic Director Josh Hired, whatever how you say it, as interim AD. So Louisville without an AD and a president right now.
Yeah, and with a basketball team that's kind of struggling a little bit, that hasn't quite found its footing early in the season with the whole Chris Mack fiasco.
A basketball program that's struggling.
So they're it's tough times down there in that neck of the woods, and I think that Rick Bozich had a really good column over the weekend about it that was very entertaining. That I kind of enjoyed, and they're an easy target right now. Let's put it that way. They're what do you want to call it? Low-hanging fruit, as we say in this profession.
Well, they make that life hard on themselves. They cannot get out of their own way.
Yeah,
I mean, it is time after time. It's like, really, did you really do that again?
Yeah. Well, they're a city school, right? Very similar. Like, I went to the University of Miami. It's the same thing, and it's hard to compete with the state programs, and you have to cut corners, and that's what they've been doing.
Bull crap. That's a bunch of crap. That you got to cheat. That you got to do all that kind of crap. No. I'm not buying that. That's bull. You don't have to cheat like that. You don't have to do all those under the table things. You don't have to just do all that. They were successful before they did all this. So
Teddy Trump era.
Yeah, well, that was some other stuff going on there, though. But
there's always stuff going on, that.
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah,
Louisville's a river town, you know what I mean? And river towns,
riverboat gambler, baby.
Exactly. They what do you want to call it? They do things a little differently down there.
Baylor becomes the 4th number 1 in the last 4 weeks in the AP Top 25 Men's College Basketball poll, as Purdue lasted about 4 days in that spot. And they almost lost a second time in that week. But Baylor won the national championship last season without ever reaching number 1 in the top 25. How about that stat?
Yep. And
did not realize that. They're behind Gonzaga the whole time.
Yeah. And I think with Baylor, that's a testament to Scott Drew and his program. And, you lose Davion Mitchell, you lose Butler, and you still have a team that's competitive and up there. They held Villanova to 37 points. I mean, you talk about defense. I mean, shutting a team down. Purdue's kryptonite showed, in that Rutgers game. Can't get the ball up the court. Press. Mike Woodson, if you're listening. Dane Fife, if you're listening. Press them. Full court. Get on them. Because their guards are shaky, handling the ball. I think that's how you beat Purdue. You got to really get in their face, extend the pressure. Rutgers did that at the end of that game. got back in the game, hit the miracle shot, obviously, but they wouldn't have been in that position had Purdue taking care of the ball. And we saw that at the end of the Iowa game that they almost blew at Mackey as well.
Baylor sits at number 1, like I said, 9-0, undefeated. Duke slides back up to number 2. Purdue only fell to number 3. The Bruins of UCLA, number 4. Gonzaga's at 5. How about Alabama? Another big win for the Crimson Tide as they beat, was it Gonzaga the other night?
They beat Gonzaga last week. Yeah, this week they beat Houston. Yeah.
Houston, that's what it was. Houston, yeah. They've got some great resume building wins on their resume already.
No question. And you know who I had number 2 on my ballot and who was number 7, and I got some nice kudos on Twitter from people from that state, is Arizona. Going up to Illinois, beating Kofi Coburn. Arizona, you look at their resume wins. They've got a lot of good wins, and they're number 1 or number 2 in the net. I think they're underranked. I think that's a very good Arizona team right now.
Well, they're 9-0, and that's kind of far down.
And I watched them. I watched them beat Illinois and Champaign, and they were impressive. I mean, it's not easy to go in there with Kofi and the rest of that team. Illinois is going to be a strong team again this year. I thought that was a really impressive team, and I thought that they definitely deserve to be ranked higher, and I had them ranked higher in my ballot.
They are the first undefeated team after Baylor down there at 8th. Villanova number 9. Southern Cal and Iowa State 10-11 at 10-0. Michigan
State.
2
more undefeated teams, yeah.
Auburn. So Ohio State comes in at 15. Kentucky dropped to number 21 after that loss to Notre Dame. And
I didn't have Kentucky muscle. I had them out, yeah.
Yeah, they're 7-2.
Who is Kentucky beaten? They haven't beaten a Power 5 team. I mean, even India. Oh,
they've lost. They've only played 2 Power 5 teams. They lost to both of them.
Yeah. So how are they a top 25 team?
I'm not saying that they are. I'm just reading it off there.
Yeah, exactly. And how is well, Indiana St. John's, which is Power 6 maybe. They're a Big East team.
I think we got to take a break. I missed. It's time for a break. We got to take a break here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with more. Mike DeCourcy joins us next, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Whether it's a celebration. Good day, Mr. DeCourcy.
Morning, Jim. How are you?
I am fine, sir. Yourself?
Doing very well.
Don't discuss the poll with DeCourcy. He's a poll agnostic, right?
He's a what? Poll Nazi?
Poll agnostic. That's what he called himself last week.
Who, Mike?
Yeah.
Poll agnostic.
Kind of funny.
I've never.
We were talking about Kentucky, and Kentucky, how are they ranked in the top 25 when the only 2 Power 5 teams they played, they've lost it?
Why do you do that to yourself, Kev? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. Exactly. That is the truth, because it doesn't matter.
It's too much work for no money. That's a big thing for me. I'm not giving away my services to the Associated Press.
Okay.
What?
No, they don't pay you to vote in the poll. It's the prestige, I mean, it's gets your name out there.
Yeah. I did it twice, 2 years. And the third year, I was on a beat with another guy who used to go around in the beat circle or the program bragging that he knew nothing about basketball. That was his, and at the end of my second year on the poll, they took the vote away from me and gave it to him because it was his turn. And I said, that's it. Never doing this again. I called in from too many dinners and spent too many hours to get that. Now it's easier now because you just email it all and all that. But back then you had to call in. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm never doing this again. And I've been asked a few times and I've refused.
You stood your ground, and you won't back down. Yeah.
It was frustrating because the year that I voted was one of the years I voted was 1990, and LaSalle had Lionel Simmons and
Train, yeah.
Yeah, they had 3 other pros on that team, but because they were in the Metro Atlantic, nobody would vote for them, number one. So like for like a month solid, maybe more, 5 weeks maybe, I was the one, like it was I was the one. So when they had a reunion for that team like 10 years ago, I said, man, you should invite me. I was the
15.
one.
All right, here we go.
Stay at your convenience, or you can find it any place you podcast or on this station each weekday. If we're not on the station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurants.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News joins us now, along with Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers. Guys, how are you, Michael?
I'm well this morning. How are you, Jim?
Fine. I'm just reading. I just happened to see a thing that a reader put up there that Carmel and Center Grove were voted out of their current conferences, high school up in Indianapolis. There's only so many of those 6A schools. Where the hell are they going to go?
The article that Kyle, is his name pronounced Needenrep? Is that how he pronounces it? He does a magnificent job. He's one of the best high school writers in the country. He is tremendous.
He's on with us each week. He is. You want to talk about someone's job? I would not give. You could not pay me enough. Is his this dude? He's the hardest working man in show business. I'm telling you.
It's a tough job. He does a fabulous job. Comes up with all kinds of great stories, and obviously was on top of this news yesterday. And I don't know the name. I'm not familiar enough with Indianapolis high school sports. But the suggestion in the article that Kyle wrote is that they would join the conference that Hamilton Southeastern and Zionsville and teams like that are in. And it geographically, it certainly fits for them to be in that league. That would make, I believe, that league a 10-team league at that point. And that would leave the Indianapolis league that Carmel is leaving at 6 teams. So I don't know what the repercussions of that are, but it does seem like that's the way it's going to head.
Yeah, the MIC, as it's commonly called up there in Indy, will be down to 6 schools then. So I guess it doesn't matter that much. It's high school, right? They will have plenty of other teams to play, but it just caught my eye. How are you doing? What did the Steelers do? I'm trying to remember. I know that
but at least it's been enough days that the pain has waned.
Subsided.
Yes, a bit. Yeah, watching the Bengals lose on Saturday and watching the Ravens.
That was a rough loss.
Yeah, so that sort of mitigates the discomfort a little bit.
But the Ravens loss cost the Colts because of whom they were playing. I think.
No, because the Ravens lost to the Browns. So. I mean, in the wild card race, I guess it's such a jumble. There's so many teams that are basically 7-6 ish. In the Steelers' case, they're 6-6-1. So there are several teams that are 7-6. So to get in, you got to win. And for the Colts, that means beating the Patriots, which I believe is on Saturday of this week. They're moving in to fill the college football void now. And I don't know how for the Colts that's anything but a must win.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a jumbled mess there in the AFC North. There you've got Baltimore at 8-5 now, maybe without Lamar Jackson. Cleveland and Cincinnati at 7-6, and Pittsburgh at 6-6-1.
Yeah, and they have multiple intersections on the way into the house. I think each team plays another division opponent twice, so there'll be lots of that sort of carnage. Plus, the schedules for the Steelers and and the Ravens in particular are very difficult. The Steelers, outside of the 2 conference games that they have remaining, the division games they have remaining, the Ravens and the Browns, they have to play the Titans as well as the Chiefs. It's even tougher for the Ravens, who have to play the Rams and the Packers. So what happens in that division, I think, will go down to the very last day. And of course, that's exactly how the NFL wants this to be. This is their dream scenario. Everybody's still alive except for, I'm sorry, excuse me, Kevin, the Jets and the Jaguars. Everybody else is really in the hunt. It's a phenomenal race. But there are people who are complaining about that, mostly sports writers, who, if they don't have a team to say this is the best team and that's what everybody's shooting for, then they get antsy. You got to have that, or you can't really. It's so hard to just look at what the picture is if it's jumbled and make any definitive conclusions. So a lot of sports writers, not all, get frustrated by that.
Yep. Jets and Jaguars the day after Christmas, by the way. Plenty of good seats still available at that.
It's a big game for both of them because they can get a win.
Well, it's if you win, you lose, because it's better for the draft, positioning the following year.
Reading
absolutely
Kirk Herbstreit, your piece on Kirk Herbstreit and his opinion on the college football playoffs and Cincinnati finally getting in, where he was saying that the conspiracy theorists or it's a joke. Actually, I agree with everything you said. It's it is. It doesn't matter what sport we're talking about. They want the name brands. You want Duke and Kentucky and Kansas, and you want Indiana to be good. And in college basketball, you want those teams to be good. And it's the same with the college football playoffs, I think.
Here's how it's different, though, Jim. If you are the NCAA, or you are the TV networks, or whomever, or you are those sports writers that like to have that team to point toward, whoever the group is that you're talking about, in college basketball, in college soccer, in college volleyball, in the NFL, in the NBA, in the NHL, in Major League Baseball, in Wimbledon tennis, there you can want whoever, but there are certain ways that anyone else can get into that championship. If you are a basketball team in the Horizon League, if you win the Horizon League tournament, you get to play for the championship. If you are a tennis player and you are ranked 1 to 30 or whatever the number is, they have to put you in the U.S. Open. They can't say no. If you are an NFL team and you either win your division or you meet the wild card standard, you are in. In college football, they invite everybody that plays for the championship. It's the only sport that I've been able to find on the planet where all of the individuals in the most important championship are invited. No one can say, if I win this conference, I'm in, no matter what. No one can say that. Literally, not even Alabama can say that, because you could theoretically, I guess, not that they could lose 2 of their games against Mercer or whoever, and not make it, and then go out and win the SEC. They still wouldn't take them, even as Alabama, if they lost to Mercer. No one can say, this is what I need to do at the start of the season, and if I do these things, I get to play for the championship. It's the most broken postseason in any sport on the planet, and it has to be fixed. That you have to have automatic qualification. If you don't, your championship is not legitimate. So even if Cincinnati goes out and beats Alabama and then beats Michigan or Georgia, it's not the same as, let's say, if Butler if Gordon Hayward's shot had fallen. It's not the same, because everybody in the 2010 NCAA college basketball season had a fair and equal opportunity to pursue the championship. And that's not the case in college football. And I realize that he works for ESPN and that they put that thing on TV. And I'm not saying that it's not entertaining and that it's not good competition when the games are good, but it's not the way football. It's not the way sports are supposed to work.
I agree. And they have to expand this, I think.
Yes. Well, at the very least, you have to expand it to 6. So you can get all 5 Power 5 champions in there and one from the other 5 leagues. You have to that's one way to do it. However, that excludes the possibility of Notre Dame. So then you have to go to 8 because Notre Dame is an independent. And if they put together,
but why does Notre Dame get special treatment? Because
there's no requirement. There's no requirement that anybody belong to a conference. Everybody gets wired up about that, but no one should. Just as no one should be able to force you to pay your coach a certain amount of money, limit the amount of money that you pay for your coach. You shouldn't have to play in a league if you prefer not to. If you go out with that, if you put together a season that's worthy of a spot in the championship, a 12-0 season, say, then you should have every opportunity to make it. You just don't have the right to automatic qualification. You have forfeited that right. So you should have to be an at-large team. So that's why 8 is the minimum that would make a fair championship. They're talking about 12. I'm not saying that they need 12 to make this a fair playoff. But if they do that, it certainly is more just than what we have now, as long as there is automatic qualification. They're hung up now on this distinction. This is how funny negotiations get sometimes. The original plan was for the 6 highest conferences, highest rated conference champions to get an automatic bid. That was the original plan that came out of the committee that included, I believe, the Big 12 commissioner, Bob Bowlesby, the SEC commissioner, and several other people. That was the original plan. The group, the alliance group of ACC, Pac-12, Big 10 want that to be semantically different, which is to say the Power 5 champions plus 1. And the reason for that is they don't want. There have been years when the ACC champion this year would not make that standard. There have been many years, multiple years, when the Pac-12 champion would not have met that standard. So they want it to be Power 5 plus 1. And so they're hung up on that right now. That's one of the things that's stopping the expansion from happening. I think I don't know how wedded to either one of those circumstances the divided groups are, because I really still think it comes down to money. I don't think they want to expand this playoff and only have one bidder, which would be the ESPN. I think that the other parties involved want this to be open to all bidders so that they can maximize the revenue, whether it would be Fox or Turner or NBC or maybe even someone like Amazon. I think they want to. There's a group that wants to see how much money is this thing really worth if we put an expanded playoff out on the open market for bidding.
Yeah, I heard Kevin Warren talking about that multiple TV partners. That's the one thing that he's really looking for, and obviously, with the Big Ten's affiliation with Fox, probably pushing for Fox to get involved somehow.
I think that's part of it, absolutely. But I think they want Fox to have a shot. But I do think that there's a possibility that someone else, because we don't know what any of them think. No television network wants to buy something and lose money on it. They want to buy something that's going to help bring in viewers and make money from it. And so they know what the number is where they're likely to not be able to see that profit, or what the dividing line is for them. And so I don't know whether Fox or Turner or whomever or ABC, ESPN, how far they're willing to go. I don't know, but I think that what I do know is that if this playoff were put in a open bidding situation instead of a one bidder situation, it's likely that the number would be higher with the open bidding.
Oh, I would think so. How much pressure is Cincinnati under to win, to play well, not to win, but to not get embarrassed, to not get destroyed? Because I'll be honest with you, I saw that team play with my own eyes, and I didn't think they deserved to be in. I'm like, if this is one of the top 4 teams in the country, we're screwed this year. There aren't very many good football teams. But
well,
that was
one,
just
that's
my.
true. This year, I mean, if you think about it, Alabama, which is now the number 1 seed, was life and death to beat an Auburn team that wasn't very good. And they should have lost. I mean, Auburn had to screw up 3 different ways for Alabama to even go to overtime. Auburn had 2 possessions where they needed a single first down, and they were in Alabama territory on both of them, I believe. They were in plus territory on both of them. And all they had to do was get a single first down, and that game ends with an Auburn 10-3 victory. And they failed in both cases, and in both cases failed not just physically on the field, but from a standpoint of offense, of mentality. The one running back went out of bounds when he shouldn't have, when he should have stayed in bounds. You go out of bounds if it gets you the first down, sure. But you do not, if you are not sure you're getting a first down, you do not go out of bounds. You stay in and you go down. Failed there. The coaches failed on both occasions to on the third down plays to be aggressive with pass plays and allowed their running backs to get squashed on third and short runs. And then, of course, they gave up a 90-plus yard drive. So there were multiple physical and mental failings there. And so that's your number 1 seed that needed that to win. And also, I mean, literally, we're in a 1-score game with 2 programs that fired their coach, LSU and Florida. And that's your number 1. So that's the first thing you have to understand is that the power teams that are in this playoff are not at the standard that they were the Clemson team that had Deshaun Watson, or the LSU team that was unbelievable that had Joe Burrow. I mean, that's not what you have this year. And so I relative to Cincinnati, look, if they don't play well, they're going to catch a lot of heat. But their simple argument is to point to the playoff tournament's history, which is that very few of the semifinal games have been competitive.
Nope, they've done blowouts, yep.
And I think some of that is that finality that you get behind and you start to get a little desperate, and I think that feeds into it.
Yep.
And then some of it also is the disparity that that LSU team was going to blow out almost everybody that they played. They were just ridiculous. And Alabama's team last year was much the same. With I watch now Najee Harris every Sunday play for the Steelers, and I'm like, I can't believe this guy was in college last year. I mean,
I remember having that conversation with you. I'm like, I said, people, you want to know why those teams were so good? I said, that's why. I said, look how phenomenal this dude is. He's awesome.
And I think another factor too, you're talking about before, is the layoff also. That 3 or 4 weeks, you're not in that rhythm as well. And, you have holidays, players go home. You're not really as tightly focused, and you try to come back and practice that 1 week, and it affects some teams differently than others.
Michigan.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say I spoke to Luke Fickell last week, and one of the interesting things was they're preparing for a championship level game, but there's also the realization he's got a month, to chop up into practices, however many they do. Finals and all that stuff. But they are looking at this as a bowl practice session, which means that, yes, they are trying to win the Alabama game and they are going to put in a game plan and all that stuff. But they're also using that time to prepare next season's team, to get some guys some reps. They'll do it again in spring practice. But traditionally, because there's that long time, it's not just a week or 10 days where you prepare for a single game. It's nearly a month where you prepare for this game. They're going to do bowl practices, which means, your entire focus in all of those practices, it's not specifically on winning the Alabama game. It's continuing to build the program.
Michigan, to talk about them a little bit. You had a piece on them a while back as well, but that's another team that has gone into this conversation. They have disrupted Ohio State's run and vanquished their own demons and kind of are they the new team in the Big Ten East? I doubt it, because Ohio State has already hired the country's best defensive coordinator. They're not sitting anywhere. They're like, oh, this will not stand. So that'll be an arms race going on. But Michigan, whether they're back or not, I don't know, but they are back this year at least, and that changes the Big Ten a little bit.
I saw them play with my own eyes in the Big Ten championship game, and defensively they are mighty. They are terrific, and I'll be very interested to see, because they're playing against a team in Georgia that's built much the same way. And as they're currently constructed, and we don't know, Georgia has been very, very stubborn, for lack of a better word, about not using KT Daniels, the quarterback who played a lot last year and who's considered to be their most talented quarterback. So as their offenses are currently constructed, they both seem vulnerable to the opposing defense. We have never had, I don't think, I don't remember one, and I'm interested to look it up. I don't remember a slugfest defensive battle in one of these playoff games, one of these playoff semifinals. It has always been about weapons, about who's got the best offense and the most unstoppable offense. And again, it goes back to last year with Alabama, the year before with Alabama, with LSU, the year before Trevor Lawrence's big year. But neither of those teams has that. And so it'll be very interesting to see how that game plays out. Michigan's defense is really impressive. And it wasn't, obviously Iowa's not a great offense either, but even without that, they were very destructive to Ohio State. And we know Ohio State has that kind of attack. They have they have more great wide receivers than some NFL teams do, and a terrific quarterback. And Michigan was able to not necessarily completely break them, but contain them. And Georgia not as good offensively, so they should be able to keep Georgia to a reasonable score. It's a question of how well they perform when they have the ball themselves.
We'll talk. Stetson Bennett has been a disappointment, and I think that showed in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. There's a lot of pressure from the media, from Georgia fans, to make a change there to Daniels, and they've resisted that. And so I'm fascinated to watch that game to see how it goes, because I think defensively, both of them can stay with Alabama, and Alabama can be contained. This is not the Alabama offense of a year ago. They have been contained. They weren't in the Georgia game, in the SEC championship game, but they were a week prior to that by an okay Auburn team. They have been on multiple occasions. So if they play Alabama, whichever one of those teams plays Alabama in the championship game, if they play situationally smart, they should be able to be competitive. Georgia did not do that in the SEC championship game. They were situationally poor, and that's why they fell behind and ended up chasing points and failing.
We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about how the NCAA let Bruce Pearl off easy after the FBI investigation. That was not even a slap on the wrist. That was like a slap on a finger. But back with Mike DeCourcy and Kevin Brockway right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
The pro and college football.
You'll have a little bit of a shorter segment coming out. You went long there.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, I mean, you're fine. It's not a big deal. I just want to let you know where you were at time-wise. Mike, do you call Tom Leach's show once a week?
Yeah, I'm on Fridays there, yeah.
I'll be filling in for Shannon here in a few weeks there. I'm just curious if I'll be there on any of the days you call in.
Yeah. Friday mornings at 8:35, they get in touch with me, yeah. In that case, I don't call in, they call me.
That's right. Yeah. I haven't filled in for Shane in a while. I forgot how it went.
Yeah, you're on someone in Louisville. I've heard you before too.
Yeah, 5 o'clock on Tuesdays. I'm on with Andy Sweeney.
Oh, that's the ESPN station. Yeah, that's
busy
where I'm at.
Dude.
I'm down in Louisville.
I am a busy dude. Yes.
Do you have at least one show you go on per day?
No, most of them are on early in the week. The lead show is an exception. Most of my regulars are on Tuesdays. I have 3 regulars on Tuesdays, 1 on Wednesdays, and 1 on Fridays.
Okay. Actually, I don't know that I'll be doing any of the Fridays. I think I'm only doing Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays in the next few weeks. So you won't hear from me. You'll be hearing from Rick Ryder. All right, we got about 20 seconds.
4% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Or how about a brand new 2021 Honda Passport? Also 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by RE/MAX Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers joining me, as is Mike DeCourcy, senior editor from the Sporting News. When word came out, there was no shock that the NCAA was going to tap Bruce Pearl on a finger with a 2-day suspension or 2-game suspension. I don't think anyone was surprised, but it just makes you shake your head because nothing's going to happen to these teams. The NCAA it's like they finally just said, screw it. Do whatever you want to do. I'm tired of fighting with it. I'm tired of fighting with you all. Just do whatever you want to do. Texas, you're going to give any offensive lineman $50,000. Nah, that's not an inducement at all. Go ahead and do it. But it just seems like they've just quit trying on anything. And this is just one of those examples.
Well, I will say that I was shocked that I was shocked that Auburn did not get another year out of the tournament. I was more shocked that the suspension was only 2 games. I would not have anticipated that in any way, shape, or form. You know what I believe it was Pat Forty that asked on the call. Maybe it was another reporter, I forget now, that asked whether Bruce's track record, for lack of a better term, had been taken into account in assigning a 2-game suspension. And the representative of the infractions committee who spoke with us said it was. And so the line I used in the column that I wrote was that that made me believe that if he had no track record, he would have been punished with a week-long trip to Hawaii. I mean, if 2 games is what you get for having had in your past a 3-year show cause, and with the allegations that were present in this case, I don't know what would result in harsher punishment. Now, what's interesting about that to me is that there are still, out of all this, Rick Pitino lost his job at Louisville fairly quickly after the FBI case was revealed, and Louisville was.
And that
revealed.
was by the school, not by the NCAA.
Yes.
The school did that.
The school did that. And last year, Sean Miller, whose Arizona program was mentioned, and who's one of whose assistants was indicted. He lost his job, but most of the coaches whose programs have been cycled through this, most of the coaches still are in place, and some of them are firmly in place. Most of them are firmly in place, and it's interesting that that there has been very little repercussion to this point, but we still have multiple cases that are in the NCAA's new the new process that they call the Independent Accountability Review Process, the IARP. And we don't know how those coaches will be treated. But every indication that I've seen, based on the documents that have been exchanged between the NCAA and the University of Kansas, have suggested that the punishment that's coming for Kansas will be harsher, and in my opinion, extreme, over and above, especially relative to Bill Self and the charges he's been faced with.
Now that would shock me.
Well, that's what's interesting, and because what I'm saying is that if you followed the case that was adjudicated, I believe in the fall of 2018, in which a former Adidas representative, TJ Gasnola, testified that he had given inducements to multiple recruits, the family members of multiple recruits, I should say, relative to their attendance to Kansas, that he had given them inducements. But then in the same testimony was asked if Kansas had been aware, Kansas and the coaching staff had been aware of those activities. And his response was no, that they did not know. And so it's interesting to me that the NCAA, based on the documents that they presented, their notice of allegations and the response to Kansas's response, they seem to cling very tightly to the admissions of rules violations and seem to completely discard his assertion that Kansas was unaware. And so I think that that dichotomy mitigates the case. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't think that there were infractions at Kansas. I don't think there's anybody at Kansas that doesn't think that. I mean, they know that particular players were there and that Gasnola said that he gave sums of money to particular family members. So I don't think there's anybody at Kansas that doesn't think there were infractions. But the case that's been built against Bill Self in particular for his monitoring of the program the language at least is very severe. And we'll see what the IARP does with them. But I've written this before, and I still strongly believe this, that if he is punished, especially now that he knows what Bruce Pearl got, that if he's punished in the extreme, and I mean like anything that looks like a half a season or a season of suspension, like if he gets 5 games instead of Bruce's 2, I think they'd probably move along. But if it goes above that, I think you're talking about the very strong possibility the NCAA will be sued in a court of law.
That would be that would open up a whole nother can of worms without question, yes. For sure. But yeah, the teams like that, they go along as if they are untouchable because they have been. The NCAA doesn't want these teams on the shelf. I think that's part of the reason why they didn't give Auburn another year of a postseason ban. They would rather have them on TV than not have them on TV, which only says that, hey, go ahead and keep cheating. There's not much of a punishment there.
Well, now it's hard to cheat, Jim. I mean, it really is. It's hard to cheat because there's so much that's permissible. It's become really difficult to find things that are outside the rules. And so if you're going outside the rules now, you're really committed to it because there's not that much that, like, here's what I say. Okay. Now you can't, as a school, go to a business and say, hey, would you give our quarterback $100,000? Let's use that number. You can't do that. But what you can do as the coach is say, hey, look, you're going to be the next great quarterback at State U. And let me tell you, the last great quarterback at State U, he left here with $1 million in his pocket from NIL. That's what he, and so we can't promise you that. But if you come and start for us and play well, you're going to go to the NFL with a nice little nest egg on your way into the league. That's what they can say. And let me tell you, that's not new. I mean, in the sense that, I use this story because I want to show what's possible and what's been done. I mean, when Cliff Rozier, who was an All-American at University of Louisville back in the 90s, he had been recruited initially by North Carolina and went there for a while and really liked it, but didn't think he fit into the program and decided to go to Louisville. So when I was working, I can't remember if it was either Memphis or Cincinnati, but they were a big rival for Louisville. Was a big rival for both of them. So I went down and I interviewed Cliff, had a one-on-one with him at the Louisville basketball office, and he told me this story about how when he was being recruited by Dean Smith told him this, that, look, if you're a pro, look at our history. We're going to get you to the NBA. If you're that good, you're going to get there from here. And so he said, so there's that for you. And if it doesn't happen, we have a network of alumni that hire most of our, as long as you graduate, we can find a spot in that network for you. And you'll probably start out at least $60,000 a year. Now, $60,000 a year in the 90s was probably about 100 now, give or take. You could do the inflation calculator on that, but it was probably around. So it's a lot of money for a starting salary for a kid fresh out of college. And they didn't, they didn't write that down, and they didn't, but that's what that was the sales pitch. This is what others who have been through our program have done. And that's the proper sales pitch now that everybody's got a baseline on NIL. This is what has happened for like Alabama. Their quarterback, I believe, has made $1 million. I believe I've seen that. They can say that to the next great recruit that our guy won the Heisman, but even before he won the Heisman, he already had commitments for $1 million in NIL. So I think that's, I would hope that that's what coaches are doing now, because you don't have to cheat to make that sales pitch. And everybody wins in that frame. You can't deny the reality that that being at Alabama helps you get that kind of endorsement. I think there was an athlete, I can't remember where, that got a sponsorship with a Porsche dealer and got a Porsche out of it, something like that. So I think that's fine. Just say to your the next recruit, hey, our guy went down to the car dealership, did some ads, some signings, whatever, and got a Porsche out of it. Good for him.
It's blue chips, man. How prophetic was that? How prophetic was that movie? Seriously. I mean, that was dead on way back then.
Well, it's not my favorite movie of all time. I didn't like the way it was presented, but those players. Look, that movie was made when I was in Memphis, so because Penny was one of the stars, and it was a big deal. So that you're talking about almost like 26, 27 years ago, and the players had value then, and it took almost three decades for that value to be realized legally. And so I'm glad that it has. I just don't want people to be out there doing deals when it's so easy to not do deals and still have the same effect.
Mike, you're talking about a lot of the blue bloods too. You're talking about Alabama, North Carolina, and stuff. What happens at a school like Indiana as far as football is concerned, or something like that, and their pressure to get players when they don't have the same visibility. I think that's what's going to be interesting too. And it's kind of creating that gap between the haves and the have-nots that's going to be even greater and affect the competitive balance.
First of all, it cannot be greater, Kevin. It literally can't. I mean, look at what we just got done talking about in the prior segment about the teams that were built at Alabama and Clemson and LSU over the last 4 or 5 years. It can't be greater. So Ohio State, like I said, Garrett Wilson, Smith and Jigba, and that's not even the guy that everybody named as their All-American. That's how good their receivers are. And it seems like they have those guys every year. So I don't think that the disparity can get greater. And I think the other thing you have to remember is that the visibility for the Alabama quarterback is great, but the visibility within the Indiana community for the quarterback at IU or at Purdue, if he's great, is tremendous. There's a lot of money there that can be realized if that player is dynamic on the field, it has some charisma off, has some pro potential. I think that helps a lot because the businesses that get affiliated with those college kids would like that to continue as we go forward. So I think that there's still a lot of, I think even at a less developed program, most of the time IU is not recruiting against Alabama. Most of the time they're recruiting against Illinois and Cincinnati and Purdue and Michigan State and whoever. I mean, because those are the schools that are trying to get the 3-star to 4-star guys and turn them into great teams, more so than they get an army of 5-star guys and turn them into national champions.
Make sure you go to the Sporting News. That's where we find everything we've been talking about today has all come from Mike DeCourcy. Great stuff, Mike. Appreciate you as always, man. Have a fun and less busy week.
I'll give it my best shot, guys. Thanks.
Hey, good job. The great Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Speak from the Sporting News. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
If you're in the market,
I didn't get to mention it earlier, but I fixed the problem.
Well, good.
It's too late for it to matter about recording the show, but I'm glad I got it fixed for future reference. Oh, man. Kevin, you going anywhere for Christmas next week?
Yeah, I'm going back to New York. So,
back to New York. What part are you from? Brooklyn? Bronx?
No. I was born in Queens, but I grew up in
Queens.
Rockland County. Yeah. So I'll be available next week, but then the following week I probably won't be available.
Yeah, because I'm already anticipating. I'm sure the end of next week and the beginning of the following week there might be some issues with people being off or out of town or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Weird though, Christmas being on a Saturday doesn't happen very often.
I know, yeah.
And New Year's, right? Aren't they a week apart?
New Year's Eve on a Friday night. That's gonna be kind of crazy. Kind of crazy.
Man, it's only been an hour. I feel like we've been doing this show for a long time. Usually it goes by fast. Can't really say the same today.
Not bad.
Jim, we got about 45 seconds. All right, I'm going to bring us back from break.
Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty at cheryl@indiehomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Happy Tuesday. Kevin Brockway from CNH Type Papers joins me as always. Did you watch the Rams game last night?
Yeah, I did. Very exciting, kind of up and down game. It looked like the Rams got their act together. I was very happy because Cooper Kupp put me over the top in fantasy football. I'm in the playoffs. He was great as always. Matthew Stafford found him as he often does. A big touchdown pass, some long passes, and Odell Beckham too. Looks like he's settling in nicely there as well. They're a fun team to watch, the Rams. And when they have it clicking, and Matthew Stafford obviously, the Colts wanted him. It didn't work out, but he seems to be doing pretty well in LA in that system and kind of tighten things up in that NFC West race a little bit.
Basketball games on the schedule tonight. Trying to, let's limit this down to top 25 first and see what that gives us. LSU's 9-0. When has LSU ever? Will Wade. Oh, yeah. Speaking of cheating, I should have brought this up while Mike was still on with us. How the hell does Will Wade still have a freaking job? One of the biggest cheaters in all of college basketball, caught on tape, and this SOB still has a job.
And he's skating by too, but it'll be interesting to see, how that all transpires. Eventually it happens. A lot of people were wondering about Sean Miller, and he eventually got fired. It'll come, Pride cometh before the fall. That's what I always say.
But LSU is they have to, and I guess maybe it's the entire state of Louisiana for that matter. I think they take pride in cheating.
Well,
Huey Long days, doesn't it?
Yeah, every man in Ireland. There's always a feeling there of, Dale Brown, right? Lester Earl. You go back to that era, but there's always been a feeling that they do what they can to get players, but they've also got a lot of talent in that state in Louisiana too that they can draw from, and having been to
where's Ed Orgeron going? Oh yeah, he's already been fired. Where did Les Miles go? Oh yeah, he's already been fired.
Fired twice. Fired at Kansas, yeah.
But he got fired at Kansas because of what he did at LSU.
Yeah, no question. So
started coming out because they're cheating. They just don't. Yeah, it's over. College sports.
But like Mike says, what is cheating nowadays? Now that the players are getting their share of the pie, what is cheating?
Well, I'll tell you what it is it's like pornography. What is pornography? That's that old line of what is considered decent. Well, what's considered decent? So there's no hard line.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. There's no hard line. But to me, what Texas is doing, it's why I keep bringing it up, is exactly against whatever rules that there are. It's against those rules. That is an inducement when you have made an offer for a player that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
When you say every offensive lineman is going to get X on scholarship and you haven't signed some of these guys, that's an inducement. You have a standing offer. And they don't even know your name or your face or anything. That's an inducement. That goes against the rules, but no one's going to do anything about it.
Yeah, I think the NCAA is in this tough position right now because you feel like if you do something about it or attack something about it, the public perception is such now that when you see a coach like Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley making over $10 million a year, the public perception now is, hey, players should get all they can get. What's the big deal here? I think that's the problem that you're facing right now. And the average NIL deal, it's interesting because Mike was talking about even Indiana and the money that can be made. You know what the average NIL deal is right now? It's people talk about, $391.
I was going to say, not much.
Not a lot of money, to be made for every player right now. But certainly,
that's why I brought this one up.
The big names
Galvin said that imagine what Romeo Langford would have gotten. Yeah, it wouldn't have touched the money that his dad got from Adidas. I can tell you that. So I don't know that he would have gotten more.
Yeah,
for running the program.
Yeah, and that's that's an interesting point. And this stuff has been going on before NIL. We all know that.
Oh,
and
absolutely. This is all this does is allow it to be not hidden, but put behind something. Yeah, it's just going to be shelters and this, that, and the other thing. And John, if we need to bring Chronic in because we're all screwed up on time, we can do that.
He's early.
Okay. But yeah, it's just, it's college sports is going, it already has changed. The last 2 years, when people look back on college sports, it's going to be these 2 years, and COVID is going to play a part in it. But it all happened at the same time with these rule changes and all the things that are allowed now. And I don't know how long it'll take for this to play out over a few years, but the changes are definitely in store for college sports. And
I think COVID kind of showed that the need for the athlete, right? Because if you, shut it down, or if people, didn't, if you didn't have the labor, then you saw that the whole industry would be for naught, and people would lose jobs, and people did in smaller conferences lose jobs during that pandemic in 2020. It was a very rough time for some people in the sports industry, but it just showed the value of the student athlete, or the athlete, college athlete. I don't like using the term student athlete because of the fact that they don't necessarily treat them like average students. They treat them almost to the effect of full-time employees with the number of hours they have to put in.
Tim's asking, why are Mr. Basketball candidates going to Purdue now? Braden Smith, Fletcher lawyer. Because Purdue's winning. Because Purdue has been winning. Because Purdue has been kicking Indiana's ass. I mean, have you seen Purdue and Indiana lately? Yeah, that's why.
But what was exactly interesting was when Purdue was winning earlier in the decade, Archie was getting, Trace Jackson Davis and Leal and Romeo Langford. So there was a stretch there where Indiana, even though they weren't beating Purdue, they were getting those guys. And that I think
Indiana got those guys. I don't know that Archie got those guys. I think that the Indiana University got those guys more than Archie did. And it wasn't known how bad it was going to be. No one could have, I don't think anyone could have imagined it would be that bad. I couldn't have imagined it would be that bad.
I mean, 2017, right? Didn't they lose to, who did they lose to in that opening game? Indiana State, and then the following year, Romeo Langford came, and then the year after that, Trace Jackson Davis came. I mean, I think people knew Archie's first season was not a very good season in 2017, and people still came.
Oh, I meant the players. I meant as a kid, you can't see it. Yeah, I mean, we could see that, but yeah, but Purdue is winning, and that's why. It's in essence. Hey, we got to take a quick break. Chronic Hoosier up next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration or
Good morning, Chronic.
Good morning, gentlemen. How's it going today?
Oh, lovely, sir. How are you?
I cannot complain, man.
You out running sprints yet?
You know what? I did a little bit of jogging, and oh boy, yeah. I'm going to stick to the bike here for a little bit longer. Get a little bit more strength back in that thing.
I hear you, boy.
Hey, Jim, quick question for you, man. Are you where is my list here?
I was going to tell you, I have a different address.
You're not at 2612 anymore, are you?
What is it?
2612 South Bay?
No, 9612.
Or 9612, I mean. I'm sorry.
It's 9621.
I wouldn't share it over the air unless you just want everybody knowing where.
Yeah. 9621?
Yeah, I will address. Actually, I'll send it to you right now.
Do that, please.
It's actually. Yeah, I kept thinking about that. I'm like, I got to have my card, man.
Hitting the mail today, brother.
Yeah, the one that's hanging up right there. If you can see that, which you can't really see it. I didn't want it to be seen. That's the one you got in trouble over.
I'll tell you what, man. I get in trouble over a lot of stupid shit.
That's the reason I put it up. It was kind of a jab back at him for you.
My favorite part is the return address goes to Assembly Hall. So for any of those that get sent back undeliverable, they go to the hall. And for years under Tom Crean's staff, they would send them over to the Alumni Association and ask me to go over there and pick them up from the Alumni Association. I did that one year when I realized what was going on. And then from then on out, I just asked they be distributed to the staff over there, which made me appreciate.
Is that how they found out about that one?
Oh, no. They've it's the worst kept secret in town, man.
Right.
All right, here we go.
Just cleaning out a drawer. Hell, I got 12.5 cards from Tom Crean over his tenure.
Or how about a brand new 2021 Honda Passport? Also 0% APR financing over 48 months and $0 down. Get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and that makes it a Chronic Tuesday. Chronic Hoosier joining us now. How are you, sir?
Glad to be back. Doing well.
Glad to have you. It is about to hit the conference season. Not quite there yet. Have a couple other non-con games before Indiana cuts loose on that. You've got a new offensive coordinator introduced over the weekend for Tom Allen with Walt Bell in that position. So a lot going on right now. Women's basketball as well.
Yes, there is. It's for dead week last week. This is finals week right now. A pretty brisk period, especially on the football team or on the football side of things over there. Picked up some pretty decent transfer portal prospects. I think the big one everybody's kind of waiting to see right now is what they do on the quarterback position. I don't know if we see that this week, but my guess is the way this thing's moving, it's probably going to be sooner than later, because at the end of the day, these guys are going to be on campus here in about a month from now. I think everybody's back. So probably expect news sooner than later on that, if there's going to be any news at all. But I got to imagine with this staff, they're going to be pretty quick to tie up those loose ends. And we'll see just what type of a roster they got put together here.
You think they bring in another experienced quarterback to compete with Tuttle?
I think that they have to.
Yeah, who was the kid that just visited this weekend?
Tanner.
Yeah, just
Tanner.
decommitted.
That was the Tanner kid, I believe, right?
Yeah. So I mean, they're certainly shopping it and making no bones about it. And this staff's been real good about tipping their hand too, and they got some coming in. So I love the game. I love to watch it. It sounds like kind of to my surprise, looks like the offensive staff may be set from the way Walt Bell was describing the situation he's walking into right now. There's certainly some questions whether or not there'd be any more shakeup on the offensive side of the ball for IU. We'll see. Like we said last week, man, it is a very high risk potentially high reward situation for him, but it's probably one that's going to be pegged to Tom Allen's tenure here at IU.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by that too. I have to be honest, Kevin. I'm shocked that there was at least one other change. And I mean, I'm not going to dance around it. The offensive line was horrible, and that was the crux for a lot of the problems. You can't run the ball if you can't open holes, and you can't throw the ball if you can't protect the quarterback. And you had the same guys back. So you had nothing but experience. I don't recall many injuries there. I know they moved some guys around, but it just was not a good situation. So I'm more than surprised there was not another change.
Well, Walt Bell was kind of danced around that question, I think, when they was asked about the offensive line and if he had the power to make any changes there. So it looks like it could be status quo, which is surprising to me too, in terms of how they perform. But there definitely has to be a level of development at that position. I'll be curious to see some of the younger guys coming up. If you remember 2 years ago, they went very heavy on the offensive line in that class. They brought in, a bunch of kids from Fort Wayne area, right? Holtz, and they've got some guys there that will be interested to see who developed. Joshua Sales last year was a guy. Khalil Benson, they had that big guy from Mississippi, but he tore his ACL. Some of these younger guys, are they going to develop? That's going to be interesting for me to see, because I don't know if Caleb Jones will be back, obviously, and there's going to be some changes. Zach Carpenter, can he come around and play center after Dylan Powell leaves this year as well?
Yeah, we'll see, because if you haven't had development though with the guys you've had and actually had regression, it's what's the expectation on developing of these other guys? Chronic.
It's going to be a huge offseason. I mean, make no bones about it. And it's all the way across the board from a strength and conditioning standpoint, just skill development. And, above all else, these guys have got to find or reconnect with that belief in one another, because quite honestly, by the end of the season, you got the sense that the coordinators, the offensive coaches didn't have a whole lot of confidence in what they were going to be able to execute. You can look at the transfers in the backfield for IU and basically infer there's not a whole lot of trust from some of those skill players in what's up in front of them right now, for a number of reasons, and not the least of which is they just weren't able to get the job done for them. And, quite frankly, ended up getting pretty much all their quarterbacks hurt. So it's going to be a huge, huge year for them, because if they miss this one and they continue to be anemic on offense, it's going to spiral real quick, real fast on this staff, on this program. And I think they know the stakes. They're not oblivious to any of this. This is all pretty straightforward. It's a zero-sum game. You got to get dubs. And, as has always been the case in the Big Ten, it's all going to start up front in the trenches.
Absolutely. On the basketball side of things, Chronic, things are going pretty well. Indiana lost 2 games thus far that they probably should not have lost, actually, but not a lot of complaining going on, just waiting to see how the team continues to develop as you get closer to conference play or regular conference play. They've looked good. Of course, that first half against Wisconsin is as good of half Indiana basketball has played in many years. Unfortunately, they played just as badly in the second half.
Yeah, that's the remarkable thing about that game is the second half stunk so badly that it completely erased almost everyone's memory of just how great the first half was for Indiana. It was about as polar opposites as you could play in 2 halves of basketball. And probably served as a stark reminder that this team has an extraordinarily high ceiling, and they have, a number of flaws that can prove fatal. Quite honestly, it starts in the backcourt for this team. Trace and Race have both proven themselves to be dependable, consistent contributors in a number of different categories. It's now down to guard play, and as pointed out to me over the weekend, you go back to about 20 years since in the Ken Palm era, basically, since we've been tracking advanced statistics. Your number 2 guard right now, or at least number 2 point guard, Rob Finney, currently has the worst offensive rating this season in the history of IU basketball in the advanced stats era, at least for any player that's getting 30% of possessions right now. So, your regular contributors, we have yet to see a player who was this ineffective offensively as what Rob's been this year. And, I'm not trying to lump all the blame on those losses on him, but no different than line play is going to determine success or failure largely in football. This is a guards game, man. You have got to have competent point guard play if you want to give yourself a chance to win. And, Xavier Johnson got pillared, probably rightfully so, after some of his decisions in the Wisconsin second half. But it's all the way across the board with these guards. They've got to be able to take care of the ball. They got to be able to convert. It's really simple for this. We've watched it for 4 years and seen just what a liability inadequate guard play can be. And it's going to be really tough to withstand it if they can't kind of raise their level across the board for this backcourt.
Yeah, really maintain the poise too, when they ratchet, because what happened in that game was Wisconsin really ratcheted it up, especially when they got life and they cut the lead under 10. And what I saw was Xavier Johnson kind of letting the emotions get the best of him and focusing on running the team. I think that's, and with Finney, as you mentioned, it's a confidence issue. It has always been with him. He misses a few shots, he misses a layup, and it gets in his head too. So I think that's the thing with them is so much of it, and so much of the importance of the point guard position is mental and being able to shake off a mistake or shake off a bad decision. And that's where I think this team will ultimately grow, is if Xavier Johnson or Rob Finney can be a little bit mentally stronger in those situations.
Yeah, and I'd also point to IU's bench. Who scored? Tamar Bates hit a 3-pointer. Yes. Rob got a 2-pointer. And other than that, the bench didn't contribute shit that game. And that's the way that Woodson is platooning these guys in and out. You've got to have production from your second level and or your second team guys, and they just didn't bring it. And you can make an argument that Rob's kind of being handicapped right now because most of his minutes are coming largely with reserve players. He doesn't have the benefit from a lot of his time of having Race and Trace inside, or even Parker Stewart or Miller Kopp out on the wings to distribute the ball to. But at the end of the day, those guys across the board on the bench have got to be able to come in and bring the energy and the production, or else this team's going to continue to struggle unless you expect your starters to be pulling 35 minutes, 34 minutes a game. And I don't think that's going to be realistic over the course of the Big Ten season.
Yeah, and you saw a lot of people calling for Christian Lander and this and that, and Mike Woodson obviously did not have the confidence at that time to put him in there. Yeah, he's shown flashes, but I guess he's not quite there where he wants him to be yet. But at the same time, like you just said, Rob Finney also has his detriments as well. So it's kind of a pick your poison.
Yeah, I tweeted about it during the game this Sunday. Christian is so wildly inconsistent, and he has shown flashes of some extraordinary talent. He has a gear that is that's not real common. That kind of sets himself apart. But the problem is it's like his head is constantly trying to keep up with his feet when things get going. And I kind of got the sense that perhaps he lost a little trust with his staff, particularly with Woodson, late in the Syracuse game when he had no other choice but to turn to him, and just saw some really questionable decision making. And that's one of those things, not unlike the football team that I was just talking about. Trust is really, really easy to lose and hard to earn back. And it's usually going to be, you gain it through your actions. And right now, Christian's actions have been too wildly inconsistent for this staff to have a whole lot of trust in him running the point spot. And I think that's why you're seeing more Rob than Christian is, quite frankly, they just trust Rob more.
I think that's a perfect point and it may have come down to that last play or that one play that they did not get off.
Never gave him a shot.
Never gave him a shot. And I think it could, because Indiana could have won the game right there with actually two different decisions you could have made. Run the play that was called or just get it inside to somebody.
lob it up to Rob or Trace. Either of those would have worked, but I think that point you made was dead on, and that was the perfect example of that.
Well, and you saw it this weekend. Christian comes in, immediately gets a steal, and within 2 seconds has turned the ball back over. You cannot have your good negated by your bad. You have to be a net positive, especially at the point guard position. And he's really struggling to achieve that balance right now. And, yes, it's going to be tough to get there if you're not getting run. But keep in mind, too, those guys put in hours and hours in cook hall for every hour you see them on the floor. And my guess is what you're seeing on the floor is probably pretty similar to what they're seeing in cook hall when the lights aren't on.
I think another interesting guy coming off the bench is Geronimo. I mean, he is a guy that obviously, and when we saw in the Merritt game, he had the double-double. I mean, he's a terrific athlete, but still a little raw. Decision-making sometimes is a little off. We saw in the Syracuse game, obviously he was a net negative when he faced a big team, but that's a guy I think the coaching staff is starting to get a little more trust in, and he's a guy that, certainly while a front court guy, kind of can be a wing guy. I'll be curious to see how he performs this weekend against Notre Dame, what kind of factor he is, because I think he is starting to come a little bit.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that I think is fascinating because he has a lot of upside just because of his athleticism. The size issue, though, he reminds me in a lot of ways of kind of an AJ Moye, who plays way bigger than what his body is. Where we've seen him struggle is when he's going up against considerably bigger bodies. And I'm not trying to take away from his performance, but let's be honest, this is a Merrimack. I had to Google what a Merrimack was before the game just to understand who they are and how they got on their schedule. Let's see some of those performances against Ken Palm top 100 teams. Let's see that consistency. Obviously, it's going to be a tough pull to expect a double-double from the kid night in, night out. But if he can focus on, his rebounding, that short corner, the weak side, it seems like an area or a role that he's poised to thrive in. I think one of the big indicators as far as his development, look how the ball finds him. That's a great indicator of how well your teammates trust in you when the ball finds you. And that's something that we're still continuing to see develop. I've noticed that, paid a lot of attention with Anthony Leal when he comes on the floor. He's bringing the energy. Does the ball find him? And the ball tends to find the guys that your teammates have the most confidence in.
Indy Nation makes a comment here off of the Andy Moore Honda hotline that says, I use offense is stagnant. Kopp and Stewart standing on the spot on the perimeter too much. They need to move around to get open. I don't know what the offensive sets are, so obviously they're doing what they're supposed to do. But one thing I have thought and is why that Parker Stewart doesn't do a little bit more to get open. He doesn't work hard to get open. If the shot's there, great. But and I hate using old time, gosh dang cliche like Steve Alford, but you go back to those guys worked to get open. They were working off of these screens to get a shot. I don't know that he works to get a shot. And if there's anybody on that team that should be getting shots, it's him.
Yeah, Parker's one of those kids, and I would lump Leo into this bucket as well. When they have an opportunity to set their feet, square their hips and their shoulders before they catch the ball, their percentages are astronomically high. Just how effective they are in shooting the ball. Problem is it's really tough just to sit there and post up and not move and not have a lot of defensive pressure by the time the ball finds you. Generally, it involves kicking out or driving and getting the defense to collapse. And again, I'm kind of with you. I don't know exactly what's being drawn up. You see it, you get the concepts, but against stout defensive teams, that's not always going to be easy. And this is a team that still, I think, it's the one benefit to this non-conference schedule. While it doesn't give a whole lot of excitement in some of the competition, it's letting these guys figure out how that ball needs to move. Because right now, that's the best offense this team has. You're not seeing a whole lot of bodies moving. It's the ball's got to stay moving. It's got to stay active, and got to find the open guys.
I think sometimes they're really effective shooting the ball when they're at their best is when they play that inside out game, when they dump it into Trace and Trace kicks it back out. and you'll see guys like Parker have space and square up and get that open look. And that's how you get that. That's one way you can get that space. I mean, you can get that space off the dribble as well. But if you can, with the way Trace and Race are playing right now, I'm surprised that they don't do more of that two-man stuff where they dump it inside, kick it back out, and you're going to have, some really good looks at the basket that way.
Yeah, and you got to get double teams. When teams want to double Trace, he's got to punish him by kicking the ball back out to the open guy.
Now, one thing, Xavier Johnson as a point guard, it's his job to kind of get that ball moving, and he does. But one thing that bothers me is in the Wisconsin game, he took 16 shots. Now, I know some of that is getting to the rim, which he does well, but that's the most on the team. Not only is it the most on the team, it's 25% of the team's shots. The point guard should not be taking 25% of your team's shots, I don't think.
I mean, unless your point guard Steve Alford, probably not on this team.
Or Isaiah Thomas.
Or Isaiah Thomas or Yogi Ferrell. No, and you heard what he said after the game. He's got to know when he's on and when he's off. By all means, if you're feeling it and the basket is just as big as the ocean, absolutely keep throwing it up until you miss. I think what was frustrating is as Xavier was watching his effort decline that game, not his effort, but his effectiveness decline. He just continued to try to shoot his way out of it, and unfortunately, that never happened. And it came at the expense of the team's win.
And I think I think Chronic Wisconsin was almost daring him to do it down the stretch. They were running that screen and roll play. He was getting angles to the basket. He was just kind of missing those bank shots and layups. They were overcommitting on Trace, making sure Trace wouldn't beat him, and it was kind of there for him, which is why he took it, but he just couldn't find the basket.
Yeah, and they adjusted really well in the second half and doing a far better job of declining Trace that post entry pass. They were just overplaying it a little bit more, and Indiana never adjusted their angles. And that's something the point guard's got to be able to recognize, and the staff for that matter, and make some adjustments on how exactly your angles of attack are going to work, because they effectively neutralized Trace, and like you said, they made the guards try to beat him, and unfortunately the guards weren't up for it that game.
And everybody on this team is still trying to find a role, whether it's Miller Kopp or Parker Stewart, because that's a new face. That's a new face. Xavier Johnson, a new face. You've got 3 new faces in the starting lineup alone, much less Tamar Bates, a new face.
Michael Durr.
The other guys, Michael Durr, all these new faces that are trying to be brought in to all fit together and then fit with the guys that were already here. I know people say, well, we're X Games in. I don't care. Hell, it may take 2 more months. They're still learning to play together. Xavier Johnson is learning to play with his team, but he's going to have to learn quicker rather than later on getting things together. Miller Kopp's going to have to – he's starting to step up. I mean, his last game, he was 3 of 6, 7 points. And Xavier Johnson, he had 7 rebounds and 7 assists in that game. So there's a lot of good things that he does. If he could just mitigate that Troy Williams effect, I call it, it would be much – because the inside threat has been wonderful. Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson, those guys are just – double machines, although Trace was only 4 of 10 in that game. So they either defended him well or he didn't shoot the ball well. But other than that, the game's come around. Michael Durr looked good in the minutes he played. He looked comfortable, Chronic. He took a shot, a little elbow jumper. He looked comfortable out there.
Yeah, he's probably as much as anybody on this team, if not the most of anybody on this team, seems to be settling into his role a whole lot better. I felt like early in the season, every time he touched the ball, you could just about bet the mortgage he was going to force a shot up, whether it was there or not. There was zero looking, for the pass. It was all about him getting his. And I think as he's come back from some injury to start the season, he's getting far more comfortable and proving to be far more effective. You're not seeing nearly as big of a drop off when Trace sits down and Michael comes in as what you did earlier. Now, one I'm really looking forward to kind of keeping an eye on as the season progresses, especially as we get into the heart of the Big Ten, one thing that's kind of concerning right now is Indiana can perhaps withstand an off night from Parker Stewart or an off night from Miller Kopp. Indiana has proven really, really tough to withstand an off night from both of those guys. If those are going to be your sharpshooters, you cannot have both of them cold on any given night, or else it's going to be really, really difficult for this team to win.
Yeah, that did happen in the last game against Merrimack. Again, Parker Stewart goes scoreless in that game. 0 for 3 from the field, 0 for 2 from behind the arc in 18 minutes of play. He had 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers. So he has got to pick it up. I've been talking a lot about the Wisconsin game because this game was just a beatdown. But this is a game where his stat line should really be glowing here. There's no reason that he is not taking shots because Xavier took 5 shots in this game. That's where I'm not saying maybe that's too few, but you talk about efficient. Now this is what Xavier Johnson needs to be doing. He only took 5 shots, but scored 9 points. He took 16 shots in the Wisconsin game and scored 10 points. So much more efficient this game around. Miller Kopp, 8 points on 3 of 4 shooting. Very efficient. Trace Jackson Davis, 5 of 10, but he was 6 of 6 at the line. Race Thompson was 6 of 6 from the field. But then there's Parker Stewart, that big ofer. Rob Fennessy, ofer. Between those 2 guards right there, 0 for 6 shooting. You can't have that, especially when those are your guys that are putting it up. But Anthony Leal has shown some flashes. I think his minutes may increase as the year goes on, as he continues to improve, because he's played well when he comes in, Chronic. He's not afraid to shoot, and he shot the ball pretty well.
No, I think the thing that Anthony does best for this team is he brings the juice. It starts on the defensive end, and that's another one of those things to watch as the season progresses. When they stay locked in on defense, when the effort and the intensity and the focus, I think we saw a little bit of that in the first half against Merrimack. Wasn't for lack of effort. Honestly, it was they were overplaying. Their focus just wasn't as sharp. When they can dial that in, good things didn't happen on the offensive end of the ball. And you watch Leal come in; he's instantly directing the team on defense. Calling out the switches. It's what you've got to have from this bench. You cannot have a drop off on the energy, because obviously, from a production standpoint, there's going to be a dip there. I mean, you can't bench an All-American and expect everything to stay constant. But Anthony's just bringing the energy. He's just a solid, reliable player for this team. And anybody that can act as that stabilizing force, anybody that can knock down the shots that are open, it's only going to contribute. And that's the thing, success is contagious. And when these guys see other guys knocking them down, it gives them a whole lot more confidence when the ball goes up, when they get it. And Anthony's one of those guys that he brings the positive energy to this team. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more minutes come his way. Now, I'm real curious to see what happens when Galloway gets cleared here, because that's yet another piece that's going to have to mix in and, reattain that balance with a position that this team's got a lot in flux. I mean, that 3 spot is kind of amorphous. With the number of guys that are being thrust into it, every one of them bringing something a little bit different. So I'm fascinated to see how that chemistry is affected when Galloway's cleared to return as well.
Well, we'll talk about that when he comes back, but I'm like, what is he going to do? Because I don't know. I still don't know what he offers to the team, what he's going to bring. I've still been waiting to see what that is, especially on the offensive end. What is he going to do in that? But anyway, we'll talk about that when he comes back. But before we get out of here, I do want to bring up your efforts with the Hoosier Hills Food Bank. For people listening, what can they do? How's this? How can we make this happen?
So I appreciate that. No, it's going awesome. I've got a huge batch going out today, as a matter of fact, of my holiday cards. What we're doing is anybody that makes a donation to the Hoosier Hills Food Bank, and I'll be posting a link here later this morning, donate directly to them, anything $15 or more. If you screen grab me a confirmation of that donation receipt, email it to chronichoosier@gmail.com. And let me know who to send a holiday card to yourself, to a friend, family member, somebody. Just trying to raise a little bit of funds here for one of the best organizations in the area, to be quite honest. Bloomington's a great town. Love living here. One of the challenges, though, in our community, Bloomington's got a 35% poverty rate. Part of that's skewed by the student population. But it's one of the most hungry communities in Indiana, quite frankly. And Hoosier Hills Food Bank supports a number of local charities that help get food into the tummies of people that are experiencing food insecurity. And this time of year, it's especially tough with all the bills going up, with the heat turning on, and the holidays and everything else. And the demand on their services is extraordinarily high. And coming out of the pandemic, there's still a lot of repercussions that are kind of echoing throughout the community as it affects food insecurity. So donate to them, help feed your fellow Hoosiers, and I would love nothing more than to send you a 10th anniversary edition Chronic Hoosier holiday card.
Oh my 10th anniversary exclusive. Hey, when you get that link, retweet it with the show today. And
absolutely.
We'll get that to as many people as possible, and I will retweet that as well.
I appreciate that.
You betcha. Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. Thank you, sir. Look forward to it next week.
See you then. Be well.
We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Whether it's a celebration.
You'll have about 7 minutes when we come back.
Lovely.
Are you going to signing day on Wednesday? The press conference?
Well, of course.
All right.
What is that, 2:00?
I think it's 2 or 3, right?
2, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow.
That it is. You going to the Crossroads on Saturday?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
By the way, is Keegan going to be there with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you got anything on credentials on that confirmation or no?
I have not.
Haven't
But
seen
they'll send them out late. I mean,
yeah.
I think they send them to JD to get cleared is what happens basically.
Yeah, I am back out and about. That's good.
You're out and about now?
Yeah. Monday was the day, so I was able to get more groceries, did some Christmas shopping.
Oh. Well, good. We can talk about your COVID experience.
No, don't talk about it.
Why do people treat it like leprosy?
Because it's embarrassing that I got it.
Why is it embarrassing? I don't understand why they do. I don't understand. Why is it embarrassing? It's like catching the freaking flu.
It's because people think, oh, you were being irresponsible. You got COVID.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That is never that is never a thought in my head because my doctor got it. He was wearing a mask, a face shield, was vaccinated, treating a masked vaccinated patient. Now, I don't know how he knows that's where he got it, but
I think I got the new strain. I got the Omicron. That's what I got.
Yeah.
What's going to be the next one? The Omega variant, the Alpha variant, the Beta variant.
I mean, I'm still coughing a little bit here and there, so, but for the most part, I'm okay. Like my energy levels fine.
As well as coverage of the Big Ten. Simply go to thehoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also catch Indiana Sports Beat Radio there each day at your convenience, or you can find it any place you podcast or on this station each weekday. If we're not on the station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by Aurora Specialty Sleep Clinic. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington and Southern Stone Restaurant.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Tuesday. Five Left says Galloway's a slasher. Yeah, he slashes and kicks the ball out. I'm not trying to be negative. I honestly don't know what does he bring offensively. I have yet to see him do anything offensively. Yeah, he runs around, but that I can run around.
You know, last year at the end of the Penn State game, he made some plays, and I mean, he is what he is. But I don't think that Mike Woodson said on the show it's still 3 weeks away, so he's still got some time to figure that out. And Anthony Leal's getting some minutes now, and I think Leal was 5 for 7 to start the year from 3, and then he missed his kind of last 3 in garbage time. But he looks like he's shooting the ball with a lot more confidence. And Chronic made the point about the defense too. And while he's a little bit athletically, I would say the foot speed still isn't there. He was a guy interviewed 2 years ago at Bloomington South, a 4.2 student. I mean, incredibly bright kid, could have went to Stanford. So the basketball IQ is definitely there for him to be a better defender. And I think he's kind of showed that in his limited minutes. And, hopefully he gets a little more because, he was named Mr. Basketball in Indiana. I mean, the kid's got some talent. You might as well see what you have a little bit there.
Tomorrow, college football signing day. The names go down on paper. We'll see who has whom. We'll be out both of us will be out at the Indiana football facility tomorrow. Waiting, see how that went down. For the portal, the portal doesn't close, does it?
No, they'll be able to get guys afterwards, but they got the running back.
They have to get a quarterback, unless Jack Tuttle under Walt Bell becomes a much better quarterback, because he has not progressed at all. He has not developed. Now, I'm not blaming that on him, but I'm just saying he has not developed.
Well, the issue is
right now, Indiana does not have a quarterback.
The issue for him is the same with Penix too, the health, and he's a slightly built kid. I mean, would he be able to withstand a Big Ten season? I'm starting to have my doubts with that. And he's had some, he had the foot issue in the Ohio State game. And it also goes back to, the more glaring issue that we've talked about ad nauseum, which is the offensive line, protecting the quarterback. Sooner or later, if you're an offensive lineman and your quarterbacks are getting hurt all the time, you got to take that personally. They got to say enough is enough here. You got to protect whoever's back there. And that's been a huge issue for Indiana for the better part of 2 or 3 seasons is, your season unraveled because of the fact that, your quarterbacks are getting hit all the time. And sooner or later, your quarterbacks get hit, bad things are going to happen. So I think that's a big issue, and that's an issue that needs to be fixed.
How in the world did they not make a change at offensive line? I mean, I don't want people to lose their job, but I'm sorry. You look at every other team that is taking it seriously and to becoming better seriously in this league, in this division. You've got Ohio State hiring the top defensive coordinator in the country. You've got Penn State hiring a guy that was a successful head coach as the offensive coordinator. And yet Indiana is doing what they do. Next to nothing. An offensive line that was horrific last year. No change there. You were forced to make a change somewhere. I think that Nick Sheridan, if it wasn't so much noise, he wouldn't have been fired. I mean, I think that Tom Allen would have kept him. I don't know, but.
Well, I think Tom knew that he had to make the change there. Now,
right. That's what I'm saying, though. He knew he had to.
We will see, what happens in the coming months. Maybe Walt Bell does have the power to bring in his own people, and maybe there will be changes down the road, and maybe they're waiting until after
That's
early
the one
signing
thing.
day.
Wait till after tomorrow, because you don't want to have but you can still have people can hit the portal. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, you could be duping your recruits that way. I don't know, but we'll see how things transpire the next few months. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if more changes aren't in store in the coming weeks.
We'll see. We'll certainly see. Yep, this is the last crossroads. We talked about that earlier. No, Galloway does not get to the rim. I have never seen him getting to the rim. Maybe in high school. Ross says Alabama's going to beat up on Memphis tonight. Oh, yeah, I meant to talk about that. What happened to the great Penny Hardaway and all these NBA first rounders drafts he was bringing in? They're 4-3 or something like that. We over? Yeah, we're about to be. Man, I'm telling you, once we get going, it's hard to stop. But hey, it's all fun though, right? Yeah, we'll have to talk, see what happens with that game tonight. But Kevin, what's coming up next for you?
Yeah,
quickly.
We've got some Crossroads Classic coverage this week. We've got college football playoff pages coming out. Obviously, that was the big game. I did a big piece last week about the skyrocketing coaching salaries as it relates to NIL and where the player compensation is and how
good.
There's a little bit of an imbalance. Yeah.
All right. Well, make sure you give him a follow as well as myself at Jim Coyle ISB, and give us a follow on YouTube and hit notifications for us, please, to subscribe there so we can keep bringing this content to you. Man, thanks a lot to everybody today. We appreciate Chronic Hoosier, of course, Mike DeCourcy, and of course, Kevin Brockway, John, the producer, but most importantly, we thank you, because without you guys, we have no reason to be here. Go out and have yourselves a great day. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.